Well, hopefully everybody can hear me. This is Mike Wagner from Swix, and we're pretty fortunate to have Graham Lonetto join us in Michigan tonight, or virtually in Michigan, and do a Swix wax presentation. I suspect a lot of you that are on here have come to some of mine over the years, have listened to my speech, and I've listened to Graham's quite a few times as well, and learn all the time that I listen to him. I'll let Graham talk about his background a little bit, but I've worked with Graham for quite a few years now. Graham worked on the World Cup in a service position. He also started and ran probably the most successful race shop in New England. And we were fortunate to grab him and have him join us at Swix.
Hurry up, come up here for a minute.
As the race director at Swix for the Alpine side. So without further ado, and I'm going to turn my screen off and listen as well. If you've got questions for Graham or myself, please feel free to ask. As I've said in all of my clinics over the years, buy local. Take every bit of information that Graham's about to share with you, and buy whatever you need, but buy it at your local shop. Support the local shops. And I also, I guess, want to thank Bob Thomas at Vertical Drop for providing us the opportunity to do this tonight. So welcome aboard, everybody. If you've got questions, please shout out. Otherwise, happy holidays to everybody, and I'll let Graham take it from here. Thanks, Graham.
All right, thanks a lot, Mike. All right, everyone, thanks for coming out tonight. I appreciate it. My name is Graham Lonetto. I'm the Alpine Director for Swix. I live in Vermont, and I'm actually from your area. I grew up in Brighton, Michigan. So I spent plenty of time skiing at Mount Brighton, and very familiar with the area there. And so tonight, I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about some changes that have been going on in the wax world. Go through a basic ski tuning clinic and just an overview of all of our products, and try to give you as much information as we can about what they are and how to use them. Just kind of try to educate you on that. And so as we go through here, I'll just try to keep it moving along. It's a lot of information. And at the end, if you have some questions for me, feel free to ask at the end, or you can always send me an email. So that's great. So thanks again to Bob over at Vertical Drop. Appreciate him reaching out. It was nice to meet him this week and talk to him about pulling this all together. And so here we go. So tonight we're going to talk about our new FLUOR-FREE Wax System Pro. It's going to be replacing the old fluoro system, as you know, Ceranova. Most people are very familiar with that. And as I'm going along here, I'm trying to let people into the meeting. So just bear with me as I go. All right. And so we'll talk about some other general ski tuning information as well as we move through this presentation. Number one, why choose Swix? Swix is really a unique company in the wax world for a lot of different reasons. Number one is we have a 100% FLUOR-FREE wax system. It's not entirely unique, but there's not many companies that offer that right now. The great thing is all levels of our wax system are biodegradable, and they're all non-toxic. So it's very safe products to work with. As I mentioned, there's 3 levels of performance. Our waxes are EPA compliant, TSCA compliant, OSHA compliant, FIS, USSA, EISA, and NCAA. So the bottom line is no matter what level of racing that you're using our products for, they're safe and they're fast and they're approved. And beyond that, this is my favorite part about Swix. We have an awesome support staff. You have Mike Wagner in your territory, one of the best reps in the country, great resource, awesome person to work with. And then at the office, there's a support staff for Alpine and Nordic, and then it goes international. So we have a test team that follows around the World Cup on the Nordic circuit and also on the Alpine circuit. So we have a lot of resources for education and testing, and it shows in our fast wax and safe products. All right, so getting started, Swix Pro, the FLUOR-FREE wax system. So why did we launch a new FLUOR-FREE wax system? there was changes in competition rules for FIS racing last February. And with that, they were going to ban fluoro use. So it doesn't necessarily mean too much for you if you're racing high school racing in Michigan, but essentially it was working towards more environmentally friendly products.
But if you can get it on your laptop.
So where the rules currently stand. So for racing at USSA level, fluoros are banned and you can't use them. Racing at FIS levels, you can actually use them for one more year. They made a decision to suspend the rule for one season. So going into the next year, everything across the board will be fluoro-free. And I would suspect that you might see that even in high school racing. I'm not positive, but I would think so. So does using non-fluoro wax mean that you're going to take a step back in performance? And the answer is no. It's pretty cool stuff what we have going on. We have a lot of testing. I do testing 3 or 4 times a year here in the US. I get all the test information from Europe. And what we're seeing is the new product is actually beating the old fluorinated products.
Is it working?
We're moving towards a better performing products than what we actually had. And they're safe.
No, that's fine.
All right, so here's some testing just last week from Val Gardena, and our test team on the Alpine side was testing the high speed waxes that are non-fluoro against the last year's high fluoro waxes. Like I said, they can still use those at the highest level of racing. And you can see the result here, number 1, the high speed non-fluoro wax was beating the HF fluorinated waxes. So this is just really exciting verification for me. So like I said, we're one of the few companies that actually does have a fluoro-free wax system. So there was a lot of confusion in the market. So last year when the FIS was making decisions on whether or not they were going to be fluoro-free or not, a lot of companies didn't believe they'd actually do it. And so they stuck with fluorinated products. So most companies didn't make the change like we did. And so most companies only offer you one level of performance, which is a basic performance, where we're offering really high performing waxes that are fluoro-free. So now it's time to select a new fluoro-free wax system. But before I talk too much about that, I just want to go through our progression, how we ended up with this system. So what's the road to pro? So this is something that we've been working on for about 11 years, and it started back in 2009 with a project that we called Future Sarah. And the Future Sarah product, I used to have that ski racing store in Vermont that Mike was referring to, and I would start to see these packages of Swix wax come through with this little blue insignia, Future Sarah. I didn't really know what it was, and nobody could really explain it that good to me at the time, but what it was is a new formulation of fluorinated products that were more environmentally friendly. They decompose quicker. So generally speaking, at the time, C8 chain fluoros were being used, and they really last for a long time. They're super durable, nearly 300 years in the environment. But moving to the C6 chain that Swix was innovating, it lasted for 32 days, and it was still fast. So it was our first step towards moving to fluoro-free waxes. So over time, throughout the years, 2011, 2013, we started to introduce more and more of these C6 chain waxes into our line. And then we went under EPA review. So that was back in 2018. And frankly, at the time, we really kind of considered ourselves a sports company. And we didn't really realize at the time that we were really technically a chemical company. So we had to get compliant with the EPA, with how we were bringing the product into the country and making sure it was all on their TSCA list and safe for use. So we went through that process. And while we were doing that, we started hearing the news about the FIS making this move to non-fluoro waxes. And of course, we had a lot of progression on that side just from our own testing and moving that way anyways. So basically at 2019, we said, we're going to do it. We're just going to jump into non-fluoro 100%. And that's when we launched the Pro line in 2020. So as I mentioned before, Pro is 100% biodegradable and non-toxic. This is great stuff. And the bottom line for us is it's fast. So we have 3 different levels of performance: PS, performance speed; HS, high speed; and TSB, which is black, and TS, which is white, top speed. So out with the old and in with the new. So on the left is the old Ceranova line, and on the right is the new Pro line. So you can see they're actually quite similar in their structure. They look really quite the same. The big difference is with the Pro non-fluorinated system is instead of having 6 bars of wax, we're going to have 5. So we have 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10 for hardness. So those bars, we open up the range of wax use for each one of those. So the wider ranges, a little bit more versatile. And the really hard wax that was in the old Ceranova line, the 4 hardness, fell out of the line. It's going to show up again as I go through all these waxes here. It's in a different category called polar. So what's the big question? What replaced the fluoros? All right, so basically it wasn't one ingredient that replaced fluoro. It was several different raw materials called metal colloids. And these have similar characteristics to fluoros, but not 100% the same. But what we did was we learned how to take them and mix them into hybrids, and their characteristics exceeded the old fluorinated product. So the whole idea with fluoro or the metal colloids is you're trying to create a hydrophobic film or a layer that moves water quickly underneath your ski. So the more fluoro you had in a ski, usually it meant it could move water quicker, so the ski would move faster. And it's the same idea with the metal colloid. But the trick was how to blend these. So the metal colloids, when I first saw the first samples, they were really blotchy and they weren't very homogeneous. The technology for us is really in how we mixed these waxes and made them a uniform, cohesive blend. So once we had that dialed in, we go back to our field testing with that group that I talked about on the Nordic side and the Alpine side. And we did over 800 individual field tests around the world following the World Cup with those groups. And we used the old HF waxes as the minimum baseline performance. So what we found was that we were meeting and or exceeding those speeds, like I showed you from the testing in Val Gardena, with these new non-fluorinated waxes. All right, so we'll go through a level by level breakdown here of how the wax system works. So we'll start with performance speed, or PS. And that's going to be replacing the hydrocarbon line, the old CH. So PS series are great training waxes and for competition on a budget. It's a high quality hydrocarbon wax with good glide properties. There's 5 different wax hardnesses, as I mentioned, and it's very cost effective, a great everyday training wax. And then we get into Swix HS, or high speed. Technically speaking, this is replacing the old LF product, but truly the HS is better than that. It's much closer to the old HF product. So it's not an apples to apples replacement, but the price is the same. So you're getting a lot of performance out of this wax. So HS waxes have a greater durability and performance. There's 5 different snow conditions available, and it's a really great value to performance ratio. This wax is also offered in a solid or a liquid application, and I'll talk more about that as we go here. So now we enter into top speed, or TS, and we're going to talk about the black first, so TSB. So this is going to replace the old HFBW waxes. And in Michigan, I know this category of wax is perfect for your type of conditions. Old transformed snow, snow that's been groomed a lot, it hasn't snowed. This is kind of my go-to race wax. The only time I don't usually use TSB or HFBW would have been the older wax, is if, for me, it's new fall and snow conditions. If it's new snow and I know it's snowing out, I usually just go with the standard. Getting into exactly what we have here, these waxes are black, and they have an additive called molybdenum that's in the wax. So with that, the molecules in molybdenum stack up like a deck of cards, and they slide off one another. So it works in two different ways. It's a dirt repellent, and it works to repel dirt from your skis, keeping them fast. And then also works as a way to get the skis sliding or braking in really cold, aggressive snow conditions, sharp crystals. It can get that ski moving a little quicker. All right, so TS powder. This is a little different for us, inline change. So usually this would have been a paraffin wax that would have been replacing the old HF line. But we had really good success with this new powder. And so we're moving in this direction with this. And right now it's an inline change. So it's happening now. This product's going to be available going into the first of the year. So we're going to have it in 3 different categories to start. And hopefully by the springtime, we're going to be able to add the 5 and the 10 categories to this wax line. So it's going to be right now 3 different temp. It's going to be a powder application, really easy to put on. Maximum performance, like this stuff really performs well. We're very excited about it. So this also comes in a powder or a liquid form. All right, so we'll get right into the liquids. So top speed TS or high speed HS liquids. So these are really great. And this is probably the future of what we're going to be doing as a wax company. It's really easy to use. Really reduces the amount of heat that you have to use to apply wax, which is better for your skis in the long run. And we have 2 different price points of performance here. So it's a standalone. You can use it as a standalone wax, or you can use it as a top coat. You can expect about 15 or 20 applications out of any of these bottles. So it's pretty cost effective, really, when you break down the per use cost. And with the HS line, as a spray, it comes out pretty quick. The other one's going to be like a felt tip applicator for putting it on the TSL. With the HS, I've actually been recommending a lot of people use it just for training skis for slalom. Like with the national team boys I work with, I found that the slalom skis really have a difficult time taking a lot of heat. And this is a great way to keep the heat to a minimum. So you'd wax with the paraffin like you would normally, scrape and brush, you can ski on it for 3 days. Those 3 days, you get to keep using the liquid wax, which is, I'll show you how to apply it here as we move through the slides. And then on the 4th day on snow, you want to move back to regular paraffin wax. All right, Marathon solid and powder. I'm getting some echoes. Can you guys mute your side? Thanks. All right, Marathon solid and powder. So this is, Marathon's been in our system for a while, and we just haven't done a great job of talking about it. It's actually a really cool wax. It's basically a universal race wax. It's going to be 2 different ways that you use it. It's going to be white and black. So it's going to be old snow or new snow. Real simple to pick the wax of the day. It's really hard, extra durable wax, and this is offered in a solid or powder application. The powder is great because some people aren't really comfortable using a harder wax like Marathon, but the powder makes it really easy to put on. So it's a nice choice. And it's really fast. The testing I've done with this wax last season, it's right in line or beating HF waxes, so it's a great choice. New for us this year is a new Marathon solid application technique. So basically, this is a cold weather top coat. So you would be using this in the categories like 6 or 5, or polar, which would be the old 4. So you'd wax your skis for the wax of the day in that category, scrape and brush. And then you get ready to put the Marathon roto wool application on the skis. So the way it works is after you scrape and brush your ski, you take the Marathon wax and then you spin the roto wool fleece barrel at about 1500 RPMs, and you kind of burn that wax right into that roto brush. And then you start at the tip, rolling the roto brush down the ski, and you make 3 long passes. And what that does is it buffs out the structure and cleans the paraffin out from between the structures and makes a really clean, smooth, hard wax finish on the skis. That's great for cold weather conditions. And this has really been great for us. Last year, we had a couple of podiums and a few wins in the World Cup with it. All right, Swix Polar waxes. So as I mentioned before, this is where that 4-category wax fell in the new system, standalone Polar. It's basically exactly the same product as the old 4. Comes in a paraffin block or a powder. So if you're not comfortable working with the harder waxes, the powder is going to be an easy choice for you. It's wax for extreme cold conditions, perfect for low humidity, cold weather, and it performs really well in artificial snow.
Oh, that's great.
Another wax that we don't do a great job talking about in our system is the bio waxes. And these are actually really cool, especially if you're looking for a more environmentally friendly product.
I mean,
So,
the base.
bio waxes are going to be reusing old
Oh, okay. I'm just on the base.
petroleum product. So it's recycled petroleum. And it's great training wax. It comes in 3 different hardnesses, so it's easy to pick the wax of the day. And it's a great cost point too. All right, so what does it mean if you, what does the USSA fluoro ban mean for you? Like if you're doing any USSA races, you can't use fluoros. And so there's a couple things to consider. As we talked about, you need to pick a non-fluoro wax, and you must remove the old fluoros from your old skis if you're using skis from last season. So there's 2 different methods for doing that. And you can either stone grind your skis, or you can manually wax the fluoros out of your skis using non-fluoro waxes. The most effective fluoro removal is to do both. So we have a process that we're speaking to right now about how to remove the fluoros by just wax. And so what we're doing is we're working through 3 different hardnesses of waxes. So yellow, red, and blue. We're working from soft to hard. We're doing 3 layers of each. And as we move through that, we're going to be doing a wax, scrape, brush. And then we're going to let the skis cool, wax, scrape, brush 3 times yellow, 3 times red, 3 times blue, and then you can put your wax of the day on. So it's a good way to make sure that the ski has a clean palette. All right, so before we start to wax, we want to talk about PPE. And this is going to be a really big thing for us moving forward in the wax world. We want to make sure that we're properly protected in the environment for ski tuning. And so workspace dues, things that we want to make sure that we're taking care of in the ski room, is you want to make sure you're working in a properly ventilated workspace. You want to wear the proper respiratory protection, wear a hat, wear gloves, wear dedicated workspace clothing, wear dedicated footwear in the workspace. I see a lot of people wearing flip-flops. It's probably not the best choice. Use a HEPA filter vacuum in the workspace if you can. So that's a filter on a vacuum that's going to keep the particulates to the minimum. And dispose of any loose wax shavings in a garbage bag, and make sure you wash your hands and face after your work in the ski room. Okay, workspace do-nots. Never work around unprotected people in the workspace. Next couple I'm going to talk about are pretty specific for fluoro waxes, and that's never eat in a workspace and never use an iron over 180 C or 356 F. So the fluoros can get a little volatile if they're exposed to high heat, so you want to make sure that you don't have a lit flame, cigarette, or anything like that in the ski room. All right, this is more PPE. So just really quick on ventilation, I've been doing ski service for about 25 years, and I'm sure Wagner's laughing right now because he's been in the same situation. He's been working in some really bad garages with no ventilation at all. It's just not acceptable anymore. We got to make sure that we're working in a space where you can create some cross flow of air, open a window, open a door. Probably a good idea to have a fan working just to make sure that air's moving and the particulates aren't just hanging in the air. All right, so before you wax your skis, you want to make sure you clean with a non-fluoro base cleaner. So our old glide wax cleaner actually was a fluorinated product. So if you have any of that old stuff and you want to move to non-fluoro waxing, it's a good idea to replace it and buy new. And you know our products are fluoro-free when you see that little green insignia, the little leaf that says fluoro-free. So what you want to do before you wax your skis is roto-brush the base material clean. You're going to use an I-84 base cleaner, non-fluoro, and you apply it to a piece of fiberline. Wipe it over the base until it's covered. Wait about 10 minutes until it dries, and then you want to brush the bases clean with a nylon brush. And then you're going to be ready for wax. But before we get into waxing, I just want to talk a little bit about irons. So there's a lot of different irons in the market. We have some great price points that are less expensive, and we have some really expensive irons. So what we want to do is make sure you pick the iron that fits your needs the best. So our entry-level irons work really well. They for the money, they're excellent. You definitely don't want to be using like the household irons with our waxes. They'll damage the wax. It won't work properly. And you can really make a mess of your skis if you use an iron that doesn't really work for specifically what you're doing. The more expensive irons, they have a real specific thermostat that the temperature doesn't vary much in temp. They have thicker base plates, so they hold their heat much better. And they also have more heating elements within the base material, so there's no cold spots. So the bottom line is the better irons are going to apply the waxes a lot easier. They're not going to damage the waxes at all either. And they're probably going to be an item that you have for the lifetime of your tuning career. So if you have a hard time putting on really hard waxes, spending a little extra money on an iron that's higher performing is really going to help you out. All right, so just a really quick tip on ironing. Make sure you check the temperature on the wax containers to give you an idea of what temperature you should be running your iron. So you can see right here on this PS10 container, we recommend running an iron temp of 120 degrees Celsius. So you just want to make sure you set your iron up at 120°C. And that's not going to be too hot for the soft wax, so it's not going to make a mess of putting wax all over your sidewalls or burn the wax itself. If you're using something harder like a PS5, the iron temperature is going to be like 155. So the extra heat's going to make it a little bit quicker to get the wax into your ski. All right, some more ironing tips. So spend the money on a good iron. Use the iron lengthwise. If you use it sideways, you just reduce the heating element by about 50%. So it's not going to be as efficient. When ironing, try to get the wax into the skis with 2 passes. So I'll drip the wax onto the base of the ski. The first pass with the iron, I'm just trying to distribute the wax. The second pass with the iron, I'm getting the wax to drop into the ski. 2 passes. If it's category 5, really hard wax, or category 10, you should be able to do it in 2 passes, no problem. You want to make sure you use the iron with the base plate, the bevel, as the leading edge. So in this picture of my iron here, it looks like I'm using my iron backwards, but that's actually the front of the iron. So you can just tell if it has a beveled edge, that's going to be the front. It's going to help the iron glide over the wax as you're ironing. I like to slightly lift the front of the iron just a little bit, and I push down with moderate pressure, and that helps distribute the wax easy. Big trick is don't let the wet trail behind the iron get much bigger than the iron itself. So if you're moving really slow and that wet trail, the wet wax behind the iron gets to be really a long, wet area of the ski, that means there's a lot of heat going into the ski. And what you want to do is just pick up the speed with the iron, let that wet trail sneak back up until it's about the same size of the iron, and that's where you want to be. So what happens if you do overheat your ski? So there's going to be 2 ways that you can damage your skis. It's going to be by putting too much heat with the iron, and it's going to be playing around with the base bevel with the file. So we'll just focus on this right now. So when you go slow with your iron and you let all that heat come through to the top sheet, all those different layers of the ski's construction, they'll expand and contract at different rates. So that heat will really start breaking down the inner core of the ski. So the more heat you put into your ski over time, the more concave and convex the base material will end up being because the core has been affected by the heat. So if you can keep the heat to a minimum, it's a really good idea. Also, the base material itself will singe and kind of seal up, so it won't take the wax that great. So just remember, 2 passes, keep the iron moving, and keep the heat to a minimum. This is just more about overheating the ski. Another great way to reduce the heat when ironing is use a roller waxer. So this is a great product that we have coming out, and hopefully it'll be in the country soon. It's not here yet, but it's a digital roller waxer. It's great for parents that have a lot of athletes that take care of, or maybe you're working with a team, and you can just put the wax of the day inside the roller, make a couple of passes over the liquid wax, 1 pass with an iron, and the wax is into the ski with very little heat. All right, so after the skis have cooled down to room temperature, and you can't feel any heat by just touching them, they're probably ready to scrape. So you want to make sure that you use a plastic scraper, and you want to make sure it's sharp when you're scraping. So this is another great product that we have. And some people joke around with me as like, oh, you can buy a lot of scrapers for the cost of one of those scraper sharpeners. And I say, yeah, okay, so you can buy 100 scrapers, but then you have 100 dull scrapers. They're going to get dull anyway. So this is actually a pretty cost-effective little tool. And I was thinking about it in the ski room not too long ago. I use this tool the most out of all of my tools. And this tool saves me the most aggravation. So it's money well spent. Having a nice sharp scraper whenever I need it, it's great. We also have some other products that are a little bit more cost effective, like a file with a guide, and it helps you sharpen your scrapers on the table. But we always want to make sure when we're done that we take some sandpaper, knock the burrs off the plastic to make sure that they're not going to damage the ski, and scrape until you can't scrape any more wax off. Getting into brushes. One of the things that happens when you use the old brushes with the floral waxes, the brush gets contaminated. So we were trying to think of a great way to clean the brushes, and what we found was it's just not easy to do. So we just are saying, be safe and just replace. The brushes aren't overly expensive. It's going to be a lot easier just to buy new ones. A couple things to keep in mind: if you have old metal brushes need to be replaced every couple of years because the bristles kind of roll over and they don't work that effectively. So if you have old metal brushes, it's a good time to replace too. And once you are using your brushes, we were recommending that you keep them clean. So we actually have a video that we're gonna share with you guys. I'll send it over to Bob at Vertical, where there's a process on cleaning your brushes with some base cleaner, and it'll be an easy way to make sure your brushes hold up and they don't get overly contaminated with waxes. This is also new for us now. We're speaking to brush recommendations. So we have this for alpine and Nordic skiing in category 1 through 4. So we group the brushes in these categories to help you pick the right one. And we sent this over to Bob by a PDF from the office last week. So he has this information if you want it. So category 1, we have cleaning brushes. Category 2, we have pre-waxing brushes. Category 3, we have post-wax brushes. And then, of course, category 4, we have finished wax brushes. If you're not sure what progression to use your brushes in, just think about working from the more aggressive brush and finishing with the finer brush. It's almost like working through progression with sandpaper. Rotor brushes, really helpful. We have barrels in every sort of combination you can imagine. They really work well. They're fast. They do a great job of polishing. If you're working with a metal barrel roto brush, remember to keep it in speed 1 on your cordless drill. The other brushes that are made out of nylon, you can spin them at speed 2, no problem. But just make sure you're holding them nice and even If you roll them over like that on the edges, it can damage the brush. New for this year is this great new tool for the ski room, and it's a roto brush with suction handle. This is really cool, and it's very effective. So you hook this up to your shop vac, and I would highly recommend a HEPA filter vacuum, and you use it like you would normally. As you're brushing, any of the particulates that are coming up off the ski get sucked right into that handle. So it really limits the amount of debris that's going up into the air in the ski room. All right, when you're done waxing, you just want to make sure that you clean off all the wax off your sidewalls, brush the skis clean, and use some straps. And clean up your workspace. And now we'll just jump into some edge tuning here. So I have 5 different steps to successful tuning. So number 1 is going to start with base bevel, then side edge bevel, and then we'll talk about some sharpening techniques by hand and by machine. And then we just went through a bunch of the waxing details. So base bevel, how it works and how to read it. So this is the most important aspect of ski tuning. Base bevel is going to be where your skis interface with the snow. So you can have the best skis, the best bindings, the best boots, the best canting, tuning. If the base bevel is off, none of that works right. So it's really important that you set your base bevel and you maintain it. So base bevel is going to control how quickly the ski will edge. So the flatter the bevel, the quicker the ski. Too little base bevel will leave the skis feeling really railed or overly aggressive. And too much base bevel will leave the skis feeling really dead and damp. So sometimes there's a fine line between those two things. And some people might ask me, I'm not sure if I want a 1/2 degree or a 0.75 on my GS skis. And I always say, I would start with less. Go with the 1/2 degree first, because you can always change it. You can add bevel to get the 0.75, but you can't really go the other way without a stone grind. So once that base bevel is set, and this is the key, I said there's 2 different ways that you can damage your skis. You can burn them with your base, or you can mess up the base bevel. So once the base bevel's set, if you have it set at a 1/2 degree, don't touch it again. It's at a 1/2 degree. So if you go into the ski room and you have a 1/2 degree diamond or a 1/2 degree file guide, and you're touching up that base bevel every time you come into the ski room, even though that guide says it's going to cut a 1/2 degree, if you pressure it, you can make it cut more than a 1/2 degree. So you're going from a 1/2 degree to 0.75, and then 0.75 to 1. You're slowly changing your ski's performance by touching that base bevel. So I always say just leave it alone. The other thing to remember too is base bevel will just change naturally over time. It just does. So the skis twist and move, all those different core materials I talked about. Over time, that base bevel is going to increase. So you have to check it periodically. The thing about it is it's a slow deterioration of performance. You don't feel it happen instantly. So over time, you just don't even realize that your ski's performance is degrading. So I always say, take your skis into Bob, have them put the True Bar on them in the shop, have the guys check it out, and make sure that the base bevel hasn't changed. Usually throughout the season, if you're skiing 3 or 4 days a week, you might find that you need to stone grind your skis a couple of times through the year. All right, so this is a little bit more detail on base bevel. Diagram 1 shows a truly flat ski with a True Bar on top of it. Base material is flat, base bevel is flat. Diagram 2 shows the base bevel, what we're actually looking at here. So we have a True Bar going across the ski, a flat base material, and this little area right here is that what we're talking about, base bevel. Then we have diagram 3, the difference between 1/2 degree, 0.75, 1 and 1.5 degree. How to read base bevel. This is the trick. It's really hard. And so this is one of the things I think is really cool about ski tuning. These tolerances are so tight, you can't really see them without a True Bar or a bevel meter. But the way your skis perform on snow, it's a huge difference between these little bevels. So on the left here is a bevel guide that shows a digital reading of 5, 6. So it's basically a ½ degree. The one on the right shows a 1 degree. So you can see that little bit of light underneath the true bar on the one on the left at a ½ degree is pretty slight, and the one on the right is probably double that amount of space there. So it's a tight tolerance, but just make sure you take your ski somewhere and have it properly professionally checked to make sure it's correct. And if there's too much base bevel, you have to have them stone ground flat. You want to put the structure for your area back into the ski and then reset the base bevel. All right, so now we'll talk about side edge bevel. So we talked base bevel controls how reactive the skis will be. So side edge bevel is going to control how powerful the ski is on edge. So the sharper the angle, the more edge hold the ski will have. But with that sharper angle, the edge becomes less durable. So it won't hold up as well. So if you hit something when you're skiing, it can damage the edge more. And also the edge won't stay sharp as long when you're skiing. So some people ask me the question, should I use a 2 degree or a 3 degree on my race skis? But my question is, how often are you tuning? So if you're skiing 3 days a week and you're only tuning 1 day a week, maybe that 2 degrees is a better fit because it's going to stay sharper longer. But if you're tuning on a regular basis, every time that you ski, 3 degrees is going to offer you a lot more performance. Here's a little bit more diagram about durability versus power. At the top, it's a 90-degree angle, and as we move down to a more acute angle, obviously more performance, but less durability. So you can actually check this bevel. And there was a guy that worked for me at my race shop years ago. He was a pretty decent slalom skier. And I was talking to him one day after training. He was bringing his skis into the store. And I asked him what he was using for side edge bevel. And he told me he had a 4-degree side edge bevel. And when I was looking at the sidewall of the ski, I could see where his file had been hitting the sidewall material. So if you don't remove that sidewall material occasionally, it'll pull a negative angle because it won't let the file cut correctly. So as we were talking, I took out my true bar and my file guide, and I put my file guide against the base of the ski, and I put my true bar on top of the file guide, and I walked it right down to the edge. And with the true bar in place, right across the angle of the file guide, as it hit the edge itself, I shouldn't see any light, but I did. I saw light on the base edge side of the ski. So he actually had a negative side edge angle. He thought he had a 4. When I checked it, he had a 1 degree. So the difference between a 4 degree and a 3 degree with a really good slalom skier in a 45-second course is 0.3 of a second. So he could possibly be giving up a ½ a second in 2 runs. So it's really important that you check this angle and make sure it's right. I can show you some more detail as we go. You need to have a really bright source of light behind you when you check this angle. It's hard to see without the light source. And here's a little bit more detail on what we're looking at. It's even hard to see with my diagram. So if this is my true bar across the actual guide of the side edge guide and the edge of the ski, if that angle is showing light on the binding side, it's more aggressive than the 3 degree. If there's no light going across the edge itself in the middle diagram, it's a 3 degree. And there's light showing on the base side in the diagram 3, that's less than a 3 degree, maybe it's a 2 degree. So usually if it's going to be off, it's to the negative side. And usually the reason for that is, as I mentioned before, the sidewall material is in the way. So this is where you have to use a sidewall cutter to remove that sidewall material and make sure that there's room for your file to cut the correct angle. So this is something that you have to do on a regular basis if you're sharpening your skis with a file. So I think probably every 3rd or 4th time that you sharpen with a file, it's a good idea to remove the sidewall material, because as you sharpen, you're going to get closer to that sidewall material again, and then you need to recess it. So if you don't have experience doing this, I'd recommend that you use some skis that you don't care about. And just remember, you don't want to overdo it. Take off just enough material, not too much. So this is a little bit more detail on the sidewall of the ski and what we're trying to do. So this diagram 1 is a ski that has never had the sidewall material removed. Number 2 shows where we're going to try to remove that material. And diagram 3 here shows a finished ski, and you can see there's room for the file to cut the correct angle. All right, so we're going to get into doing some tuning here by hand. So we're going to make sure that we have the tools for the job, and then we'll go through the process. So when we're sharpening skis, we want to remember, we want to have nice, sharp skis. I know you guys have really hard snow conditions in Michigan on a regular basis, so you want to have a sharp ski, but we want a clean, sharp ski. Having a ragged edge that is just burred up can be dangerous, and it actually won't perform as well as a clean, sharp edge. So we'll go through this process here. You want to make sure you have the sidewall cutter. I like to use a medium race file. 13 tooth per centimeter works great for me. It's a durable file, lasts a long time, it cuts well. We're going to go through a progression of diamond stones afterwards to clean it up. There are finer files that you can use that leave a finer finish, but for me, they don't cut as well. So I like 13 tooth per centimeter. And then it's good to have a white ceramic stone and a gummy stone for touch-up when we're done. So starting off, we're going to want to make sure we remove that excess sidewall material. And then we want to actually prep the edge for sharpening. So what's that mean? So if we had been training and we're in the ski room, we could actually make a decision at this point. Should I sharpen my skis or just go through my diamond stones? So I could take my scraper and run it across the edge of the ski. And if the scraper pulls off plastic with ease on the edge, they're still pretty sharp. I might just go through my diamond stones. But if it's not pulling that scraper off, then I know I'm going to have to sharpen my skis with a file or a machine. But after skiing, if you hit any debris, a rock or anything on the hill, it can case harden the edge a little bit. And we want to make sure that we take one of the diamond stones, and usually a 200 grit diamond stone, and put it in the file guide and just run it up and down the edge until you hear it smooth out. So that takes any case hardening from the heat of the impact with a rock off of the edge, and it's going to make it easier for you to file. The files don't cut the case hardening that great. So this is the first step. All right, so we're going to get started with the sharpening. We'll remove the sidewall material. We'll prep the ski with the 200 diamond stone, and we're ready to sharpen. So using the medium race file I like to use a real clamp, a real C-clamp that doesn't allow that file to move at all. Clamp it down on your file guide, and then you want to make sure you sharpen the entire length of the ski. All right, like the biggest mistake I see in junior ski tuning is the tips and tails don't get tuned that well. So that they might look like they're new, really thick edges in the tips and tails, but underneath the bindings themselves, maybe the edge material is paper thin. So you're actually changing the turn radius of the ski, and they're not performing how they should. In some cases with fist racing, they might even be illegal, which I've seen. So make sure you sharpen the full length of the ski. You want to, if you work in sections, like 12-inch sections, starting from your left to moving to your right, if you're working in that first 12-inch section, you take 5 pulls, move to the next 5 pulls, and just keep that going right down the ski. All right, so now we have this really burred, super sharp ski. Feels awesome, but it's not, because that burr hanging off the ski is going to roll over when you get on snow, and it's actually going to be less sharp than what I'm going to talk about here. The other thing too is I think that burred edge can actually be kind of dangerous. So if you fall on that just like a serrated knife, it could be super dangerous and cut through your suit easy. So I like to think of this as a performance tune and also for safety. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a progression of diamond stones with a ceramic stone. So we're going to start off by taking the ceramic stone after filing, and we're going to push the burr that's hanging off the side of the edge up. So the angle I like to talk about is if I take my ceramic stone, hold it on the base of the ski, and slide a dime underneath it, and then remove it. I'm just trying to use the dime as an example for the angle I'm going to hold that ceramic stone at. I want to push that burr up right where the base edge and side edge come together. So I'm pushing it up. I'm going to do that from the tip to tail. So that awesome sharp ski that we had, it doesn't feel that sharp anymore. But what we're going to do is we're going to move to our 200 grit diamond stone with our file guide and the spring clamp, and we're going to run it up and down that edge. So now we're going to make a smoother, cleaner edge, but there's going to be a finer burr from the 200 grit diamond stone. We're going to go back to our ceramic, push that burr back up. And we're going to move to our medium diamond stone, create another burr, but a smoother and cleaner. And we're going to keep doing that until we finish with our fine ceramic, our fine diamond stone. Now the ski is going to feel really sharp. It's going to be clean. It won't have that burr hanging off of it. And on the last pass, I do just a really light pass on the base edge to take any little bit of burr that's hanging off from that 600 grit diamond stone off. So now the skis are generically sharp. And that's where you want to be before you go out and see what the conditions are. Like I'd rather have a sharp ski. It's harder to make the ski sharper when you get to the hill than duller. So I'd rather like progressively take the hum off the ski and the sharpness away when I got to the hill if it's dry, grippy snow conditions. So I'll get into that in a little bit more detail at the end. All right, so machine sharpening, we're going to talk about this really quick and then we'll wrap it up. So this is a machine that came out from Swix a couple of years ago, and it's actually been awesome. Like when this first came out, I thought it was a bit of a toy. I didn't really use it that much. I do a lot of work with the national team. And when I had it in my toolbox, I just didn't really use it much. And then halfway through the season, I started to play around with it and I realized it's just an awesome machine. It does a great job and it's so cost effective. Most machines are going to be at nearly $3,000. This at MSRP is $550. It's so hard to beat. So I thought I would break it. I've tuned about 3,000 pairs of skis with mine. The key is just keeping it clean, and this thing will be a rock star for you for a long time. And it makes sharpening super easy. So the Evo has a self-adjusting disc. It just follows the contour of the edge. You don't have to do any difficult setup. It's side edge only, so it's going to work from 0 degree to 5 degree, and it's set up on an index on the back of the machine. You can just dial in the angle that you want. You adjust the aggression with the discs. So we have extra fine, fine, medium, and coarse discs. It comes with the fine, but I usually use the medium and fine or the extra fine. So I use the medium for super icy conditions. I use the fine disc for really kind of dry, grippy snow. And I use the extra fine basically to replace my diamond stones. So it really makes it quick. A couple passes with the machine, you just dial in whatever sharpness that you want with the aggression of the disc and you're good. Easy to clean, really durable, as I mentioned. It's directional. We're always using it from the right to the left. The best feature about this machine, and it's kind of unique for these machines, it cuts while sweeping up the edge rather than down. So most of the machines sweep down and they leave a really hot edge that you need to go through and do a lot of touch up to reduce the aggressiveness. This machine I can make, I have a U14 daughter, she ski races in Stowe. I can make 3 passes with this with a fine disc, and that's it. I don't do anything else to the ski. She skis on it right off the machine, and the same thing with the national team boys that I work with. It's really cool. So it's a really effective machine. The other thing too is I can use the liquid wax as I talked about before with my daughter's skis. I can do sharpen her skis and finish with the liquid waxes for training. It's a 5-minute tune. It's 5 minutes in the ski room. I never thought I'd be the guy that did the 5-minute tune on my daughter's skis, but I am. All right, so setting up the tools for the job. You want to make sure you use respiratory protection. This will create a little bit of dust. You want to make sure you're wearing some respiratory protection. You're going to still need the sidewall cutter like you would by sharpening by hand. Pick the disc of the day if you want extra fine or extra fine, of course. I still use the 200 grit diamond stone to prep the edge for sharpening. And then we're going to use the ceramic stone and the gummy for touch up at the end if we need it. Prep the edge for sharpening like we talked about. We're still going to remove that sidewall material. You're using this machine, as I mentioned, from right to left. You're going to start as far to the right as you can and move all the way to your left. You're going to sharpen as much as the ski as you can. Remove a consistent amount of material. This machine does a great job when you move nice and slow. So it spins at 10,500 RPMs. Most of the machines are about 16,000. If you stall with most of the machines, you'll burn the edge. This one you won't. So it's really easy. You can go nice and smooth with it. Let the machine do the work. It sharpens for you. You don't have to be aggressive with it. Yeah, and then after a couple passes, your skis will be nice and sharp. That's it. So it really simplifies the sharpening process with the diamond stones and files. The Evo costs a little bit more, but overall, like cost of tuning, replacing worn out files, diamond stones, over a year, if you're skiing 80 days a year, it's probably about the same price really. And then second year you have the Evo. So the price per tune really drops a lot in the second year of ownership. All right, so now we're going to get ready for waxing, bringing us back to where we first started. So after sharpening, we want to make sure that we use a nice, sharp, clean scraper to remove any of the metal from sharpening out of the base. This little brush down here it's called a fine hand brush, fine steel hand brush. It does a really nice job of cleaning the structure and prepping for waxing. And after you're done doing that, we're going to use a non-fluoro glide wax cleaner. We talked about that process earlier. So finally, just adjusting the sharpness for icy snow or grippy snow conditions. So this is the biggest trick with the edges. So as I mentioned, get your ski as sharp as you can in the ski room. If you go out on the hill and it's icy, perfect. You don't have to do another thing. Ski on them the way they are. If it's dry, grippy snow, you're going to have to do a little bit of work to make the skis less aggressive. So usually what happens in that dry, grippy snow, you can't get off the edges very easy. And so what you want to do is take that gummy stone and make a few long, full-length passes. Take a run on the skis, get a feel for them. Ski on a pitch that's similar to where you're racing. And if the skis still feel too sharp, make a couple more passes with that gummy stone until you dial it in. So if you took a run on your skis before the race, it's really easy to refreshen that wax with those liquid waxes I talked about earlier. So don't feel like you're losing performance. If you mess up the edges and your skis are overly aggressive, you can't get that first run back. So it's really more important to make sure you dial in the sharpness. So that's it. Pretty basic. Just remember, don't touch that base edge with the file once the angle's set. If you're curious to see if it changed, bring it over to the shop and have them take a look at it. Put a true bar on there and tell you what it is. Spend the money, buy a nice iron. You'll have it forever. And be really careful with how much heat that you put into your skis. Does anybody have any questions?
How long do the liquid waxes typically last on a ski?
They're actually really durable. And that's been like one of the surprises to me. I don't know, Mike might be able to speak to this a little bit too, but I do a little bit of work for some of the ski brands for tuning for magazine tests. And I was playing around with the liquid waxes to start the season years ago. And some of the skis got 20 runs on them. And when I got them back down to the ski room, I could see that there was still liquid wax in the bases. So it actually does hold up really well. We do recommend using it with a paraffin. You know, it's like putting gas in the tank of a car. You know, you want to make sure that there's a certain level of paraffin in the ski, but supporting that with that liquid wax I think you'll be really surprised how well it holds up.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
When you're sharpening the edge, you get the metal shavings coming off and they kind of get stuck in the base. What's the best way to kind of prevent that, help that? Is it always going to happen? You just got to kind of scrub it out, and pros, cons of what's the best way to fix that or help that?
I would say like really keep an eye on your guide when you're sharpening. If you have a file card, wouldn't you just pull back, clean your file guide out on a regular basis. That will keep some of that material from getting stuck into the base. I know some people will go as far as to take like a PVC tape and cover the base of the ski to keep that from getting into the base material. But I don't like putting adhesive on the bases. I think that it's kind of counterintuitive. Like I don't want to put anything sticky on my bases that I don't need to. But just try to keep the file clean. I think it will go a long way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Will USSA actually test for fluorinated waxes on kids' skis?
No. That's why they rolled back the rules at the FIS level. It was a little confusing. It was a FIS rule that they implemented. They said they were going to stick with it. At the World Cup level, they were going to test. And they had these, basically they were like cameras. They had 3 different cameras that they thought they could put over the ski and tell whether or not it had fluoro in it. None of the cameras worked. They were all different. So at that point they said, oh gosh, it's not going to work. We're just going to suspend the rule for a year. And so they were never planning on testing at the regular FIS racing level. I don't know why they suspended the rule for the FIS racing. And USSA, I give them credit. They stood behind the fluoro ban. I think it was a great move. But no, nobody's going to test your skis.
I had a question on the burr, the side burr. One of the coaches we had said that, well, you can just leave the burr because by the time you run your first run, it'll get knocked off and then it'll be super sharp. But then you were saying we should kind of tune it back and try and make that burr as small as you can. So is that, how big of a difference is that? Or is that, I get the point about you can cut yourself. So
yeah, I think that burr can roll over and become less sharp rather than if you manipulate it and bring it down. Like just think about honing a knife. You're bringing that edge to a nice clean point that's gonna hold and cut really well and not roll over and change. That's the thing. Like I want consistency. I don't want my ski to feel different halfway down the course or the second run. I want them to feel the same. I want to be the one that's controlling whether or not they're going to feel a particular way. And I think if you tune in that manner I showed you, you're going to have a lot more control. And you can really kind of lean on that gummy stone for changing the sharpness the way that you want it to be.
all right, thank you.
Graham, are the liquid waxes available, or are those also January?
They are going to be January, it looks like. Yeah.
Okay.
There
That's a
are
big
some
thing.
liquid CH around, but not much.
That's a big tool for us in the Midwest. And, we've got a lot of kids, not much time in the evenings mostly. And the liquids obviously allow us to adjust quickly on site. And so I love seeing what we're seeing at Swix. And, I was a little concerned when they changed because the fluorinated liquids really, really worked. And then when they started to change it, I was looking at mostly hard waxes. And it's nice to see the new liquids.
Yeah, they're great. I'm pretty excited to get my hands on the new TS product. I haven't worked with that yet, but I've seen the testing. It's really good. Going back to that too, this testing I have here from Yarne, and the fact that our non-fluoro system is truly outperforming the old HF waxes is just super exciting. We're just really happy with the way that things are going. We've got a lot of good stuff happening.
Question, I thought you wanted to avoid stone grinding the bottoms after you've put a lot of layers of wax in them.
That's a great question. I think it's a bit of a myth. I'm more concerned about the edges and being able to turn my skis. Usually, so like the old stone grinding, or if you're not proficient as a stone grinder, you could make the skis slower because maybe if you don't follow the procedures just right, you could leave the skis a little hairy. And kind of the old techniques were probably a little bit more like that. The new machines are so good, especially if they're following the procedures for making a nice clean ski. You can spend all the time in the world making your skis fast, but if the base bevel's wrong, you can't turn. It's not going to do you really much good. So I've actually ground skis the night before. I ground a pair of skis the night before a World Cup race, and the girl finished third. Maybe she would have finished first, but I think that the skis can be fast. I've done skis for guys going to Speed Week at Sugarloaf at my shop the night or 2 days before they left, and they've gone there and won. So I'm really more concerned about making sure that base bevel is correct than taking a step backwards with the glide.
And you're not able to set the base bevel on your own again if it gets out of contour? You have to stone grind it then, or?
Yeah, if you want to reduce it, you definitely have to have it stone ground. So if you're at a 1 degree, you have to get it stone ground to take it flat again. And then of course you could set it by hand at home if you wanted, but you'd want to make sure that the ski was completely flat.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Do you assume that the base bevel is correct from the factory for what the ski is for? Or no?
Only Fisher skis.
Yeah.
No, that's a tough question. You really have to look at every ski. You can't assume that they're good, but it's easy to take it to a shop and have them put a true bar on there or learn how to use a true bar and check it. But I really think that you have to look at every individual ski. Truly Fisher skis are pretty good, but it's not always that straightforward. And some reps will tell you that their skis are perfect. The only rep I trust is this guy right here, Mike. But the other guys, I just make sure you look at every pair individually.
When you're tuning down the sharpness of the ski, if it needs it after when you're on the hill, kind of what angle do you hold the Gumby stone at, right? I mean, can you screw something up by doing it kind of the wrong way, or is it pretty forgiving, or no?
Gummy stones are pretty soft. I usually hold it at nearly a 45-degree angle. I'll actually use kind of a combination of that ceramic stone and the gummy stone on the edge. So I'm trying to find this diagram here. Here we go. So, really what you're trying to do is hit right where that side edge and base edge comes together, and you just need enough to push that burr or the edge sharpness up a little bit, and just kind of chip away at it like if I made 1 or 2 passes like that with the ceramic, and then I can kind of go in and fine tune it with my gummy afterwards, that's the ideal procedure. And really what you want to do is set the ski up so you could stivot or slide, right? So the trick is, for me, the process I go through, if this is the length of the ski, I like to start in the tail with my gummy stone, and I'll make a 5-inch pass at a 45, and then I'll go 10-inch, 15-inch from the tail, and I just keep building on that until I get right behind the heel of the boot. So now the ski is progressively less sharp to the tail, and I can let that ski break and stivot and slide. I can articulate the tail. It's not overly aggressive. And then I'll make a full-length pass up into the tip, and I'll do the same thing in the tip, but smaller. So maybe I'll just take a little bit of the hum off. I'll work in 2-inch sections, and maybe I'll go back 8 inches. And then I'll make a couple full-length passes just to kind of adjust the overall sharpness. But you have to ski on the skis. And so my experience with this is I was at a FIS race in Colorado at Winter Park back in the early 2000s. And the girl I worked with at the time was top 3 in the world. And it was a tune-up race for Park City World Cup. And her first run, I mean, the snow in Winter Park's crazy aggressive. And her first run, I didn't make any adjustments, and she really struggled. And she came to me and she said, the skis were way too sharp. And I was younger. I was like, oh man, did I just really screw up? Or I didn't know, like, if I really made a mistake. So I was talking to my boss, this Austrian guy, and he said, no, she's crazy. Their skis are fine. So I was rooming with this guy. I went into the room later in the night when he was on the phone with the head guy from the U.S. ski team, and I heard him say, Graham made the skis way too sharp. And I thought to myself, that's never going to happen again. And so I started taking a run with her before the race. I'd find a pitch that was similar, and she'd let me know, oh, they're too sharp. You know, like, I'd make adjustments, and I never, ever had another problem. So from personal experience, it's really worth doing it. So fast forward to me in my mid-30s, and I was doing a master's race over at Sugarbush, dry, grippy snow. And I didn't do that. I didn't take a run on my skis, and they were so sharp, and I couldn't get off the edges, and it was a crazy, wild first run. And I was so mad at myself because I knew better. But, you know, you just have to take the time to do it. So it's definitely worth it.
Thank you. Very good explanation.
Anybody else?
Hey, Graham, is it possible for us to get a copy of this presentation at all? This is good
Yeah,
information.
I'm recording it right now, and I'm going to send it over to Bob when we're done.
Cool.
And
Thank you.
he'll be able
Good
to email
information.
it out to everybody. Yeah.
All right, Graham, Mike Wagner again. I guess if there aren't any additional questions, I'm going to first, of course, thank you for the time and your expertise. It's always been fun for me to work with you all these years. Great presentation. I see there's a lot of people on the list, which is wonderful. At the end of my clinics every year, I again ask everybody to shop local. And with the year the way it's gone, you know, and people are trapped at home, and it's pretty easy to go on a computer and order it from someplace online. And all of the ski shops in Michigan have remained open. They've supported all of the racing levels in our state. And so before we go, I want to make sure that, you know, we thank Bob Thomas at Vertical Drop for his time, his support of Swix, the fact that he'll bring everything in that these people would need. But to again ask everybody that learned something, if there's gear that you need, if you want to get new waxes, please do me a favor and buy it from your local retailer. So, and then happy holidays to everybody.
Thanks, Mike. Well said. I did spend some time with Bob on the phone last week, and I do know he has everything that we spoke about tonight in stock as long as it's available from us. So that's a great resource.
All right. Well, hey, thanks, buddy. It's great to see you.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great holiday and be safe.
Thanks, Graham. Thanks, Wags.
You're welcome, guys.
Thank you.